Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the third season of Traversing the Stars podcast. All my loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. And remember, click the subscribe button, everybody. It's an amazing episode because Corinna Bechko boards the mothership. You know her as the writer of The Space Between. Now, come on board as we go traversing the stars. Sorry, give me a second. Sometimes I have a stutter. Hello, Ms. Bechko. Thank you so much for the Traversing the Stars podcast.
Very happy to be here.
It's totally my pleasure. So I always start off with a question of inspiration. So inspire your love for comics and who your earliest influences.
Earliest influences. Oh gosh, I think some of the earliest comics I read were in high school. Of course, Love and Rockets. That was a big one. Also, I really liked Harvey Pekar early on. So I guess you can kind of see where things progressed from there, even though I mostly work in science fiction now.
So when did you think you could break into comic books? Because there's a difference between loving comic books and thinking you could actually be successful in the business of comics.
That is very true. And, I used to just read them and have no expectation. I didn't dream of becoming a comic book writer when I was, say, in high school, because it seemed like that's something people did who were living the dream. And it wasn't really something I thought that I was capable of. But years and years and years ago, when you could go to Comic-Con in San Diego and park underneath and buy tickets on the day, I went at one point, and my then partner and I were just like, what if we made a comic? And we talked about it for a while, and we did, and it was published by Image. So apparently making a comic is the way to do it.
That's a hell of a way to start. I mean, right out the gate, you got Image comic books.
Yeah, I was we were actually very lucky. He's a very talented artist. So we did the entire thing start to finish before we shopped it around. And then we met Jim Valentino at New York Comic Con. We went there specifically to see if anybody'd be interested in our weird little book. And Jim is a really interesting guy. He has Shadowline, and he kind of just, if he likes what you're doing, he just kind of goes, interesting, we'll take a chance. And he liked what we did well enough to take a chance. And I owe a ton to him, because from that, I got a lot of other work.
So he literally agreed to it right on the spot?
More or less. I mean, it wasn't like a guarantee, like whip out a contract, but it was
Right.
like, I like what you're doing here. I want to see this. And we kind of thought, yeah, you talk, everybody talks a lot at cons, of course, and things sound good. And then in the light of day in the next couple of weeks, but no, he was right to his word. He's like, okay, let's make this happen. And he made it happen. And I was very new to the process and everything. So, Image, it's kind of jumping in feet first, because there wasn't the learning curve there is very large, because you don't have the whole machine behind you like when you work at DC or Marvel or someplace.
So that must been nice for the old ego, huh?
Yeah, I was so new to it that it kind of just I was kind of like, what is even happening? Like, it didn't make me think, oh, well, obviously I'll be a huge success. It made me kind of think, well, that was a thing that happened that'll never be repeated, but I've managed to keep getting jobs since then. So I guess yeah, I'm not saying I'm a huge success, but I've been very lucky in this business.
So there's a big difference between potentially getting your first gig and being successful. The thing is, you kind of have to learn on the job. One, because it's Image, you're marketing yourself in the business
Yes.
world. You only had the first issue, or did you complete the series by the time Valentino signed you?
It was a weird thing. It was actually a self-contained, fairly short graphic novel. So it was about 80 pages. So it basically was the equivalent of a couple of issues, but it was all in one, and it was black and white, which I know that's very unusual. Like, what a strange thing. But yeah, it's just it's horror, which is another thing that's like, your first thing was a black and white horror comic? What? But yeah, that's it was a large learning curve of what the market will and won't bear. However, it was 100% exactly the work I wanted out in the world. So I got very lucky there. There was no thought of pandering, because I had no idea it would ever get published. So
So going back to the idea once again of between business, getting into the industry a little bit and being successful, how did you learn the marketing side of comic books? Considering, once again, Image, from what I can see, does very little in the world of marketing their talent, which is odd considering they are the percentage of what the comic book
They
made.
are huge. Yeah, yeah.
So how did you figure out the marketing end of the business? Because once again, you are successful, and once
Oh,
again,
thank
there's
you.
a difference between once again getting into the business and learning to become successful in that business. So where did you learn the marketing and marketing of yourself side of the industry?
I honestly, I feel like I'm terrible at it. I am absolutely terrible at marketing. The only thing I've ever really done is I really like the people in comics. Like, that's not a lie. Like, there are great people in comics. And when I meet people in comics, I tend to talk to them because they're always really interesting. And when I meet fans in comics, they also are very interesting. And I've gotten a lot of friends through just doing shows and being at cons. And mostly that, I mean, I've learned a trick or two as far as like what people actually want to read. But
Hmm.
aside from that, I just kind of try to be a nice person, I guess. I mean, I do some social media, but not as much as I should. And I know that there are people that are way better at this than me, and I'm always trying to be better. And I honestly haven't figured it out yet. I was probably way too honest if an answer for you.
No, no, I think honesty is the best because there's thousands and thousands of people who are on my side of the camera trying to figure out how to get on your side of the camera.
Right.
And I'll say,
I try to just talk to everybody I can talk to, and I've been very lucky to meet a lot of really nice people that way that have introduced me to other people that have sometimes said, "Oh, well, oh, that's an interesting idea. Maybe we'll give that a shot."
yeah, I would say, I mean, on my hand, I'm in the indie comic world, the small, very small market indie comic world, and the last comic book I tried putting out, and I mean, seriously put it out, is a black and white comic book, sci-fi black and white, and they're hard. Black and white is a hard thing to push for some
It is.
people.
I don't really get it. I love black and white. I mean, color too. I love both equally. They give you a different feeling. It's kind of nice when somebody has the ability to pull off a black and white comic. Like, all of the emotion has to be in the lines. You're not
Yeah.
carrying anything with the color. And that can be really beautiful. And I honestly have never tried it again. It's a hard road, and I don't know why people don't really go for that, but sometimes they do. So it's just a weird thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you like The Walking Dead black and white, you can like everybody else's black and white comic book too.
Really. It's so weird. There's always the one thing that proves that anything that you might think you know about anything is wrong.
Right.
Like, and even like my mom, who is not a comic book person exactly, has been known to say to me, "Oh, why don't you just do something successful like The Walking Dead?" Like, huh, Mom, I wonder why I didn't think of that.
No, I ask myself that every day too. When I just do something more successful, I mean, why am I just putting out low selling comics? Just do the
Right.
successful one.
Why haven't I? Oh, they should put out the successful one. Yes.
Because we're both artists, right? And it is the principle of the thing.
Exactly. And also, if only I had a magic 8 ball that actually was correct.
Well, your current project is called The Space Between from Boom Studios. So, what inspired the creation of The Space Between, and why Boom?
Boom has been very, very good to me, and I've always enjoyed working with them. Early on in my career, I co-wrote a Planet of the Apes series, which I just loved working on, and they were so enthusiastic. And I used to work with actual apes. I worked in animal behavior at a zoo to try to figure out how to make spaces for apes better for the apes instead of just for the humans looking at the apes.
Right.
So then when I got the Planet of the Apes book, Boom actually thought that was an asset that I had done that work, which I was like, oh, they're pretty smart over there. They want to actually match people up with projects they would understand. So I worked with them lately on The Expanse, which was like a mid-season to fit in between two of the seasons of that show.
Yeah.
And I really loved my editor over there. And so when I had this idea, I brought it to him. And then it ended up with my current editor. And then it's the person who was my editor on the Planet of the Apes ended up being like the editor above her for this
Oh
book.
wow.
Fantastic. It was like Old Home Week. So
Well, you got me curious now because many years ago, God, 20 years ago, I used to work with chimpanzees. Uh,
no
yeah,
kidding.
it was called the Primate Foundation of Arizona. It was a chimpanzee
Yeah.
sanctuary. So I was wondering where you worked with, which apes you were working with, and where.
The Los Angeles Zoo.
Oh, nice.
It's the I worked on a chimpanzee project and an orangutan project.
Oh,
So,
very cool.
oh, it was the greatest thing because they used to be an old, like, the bear moats where it's just like a
Yeah.
mountain of concrete in the middle of the moat. And that was like the old style zoo from the 60s. So when they were trying to update it, we wanted to make something that even Jane Goodall would say, yes, this is good. And she did at the end come in after we did all of our studies and she said, this is good. And I went, oh,
Nice. Oh, you got to meet Jane Goodall. Was she what you would expect her to be?
she was amazing. She was just the nicest, sweetest, smartest person. So yeah. So I'm so glad that to talk to someone else who has worked with apes. It's a whole other thing, but it's
It
amazing.
it really is. Like I said, this was us. I had it was 75 chimpanzees in a sanctuary.
Oh my gosh. That is, oh, it's hard to work with them in a way because they are so smart. I feel like sometimes they
Yes.
will outsmart you and it's difficult.
I will say one of the scariest moments I ever had as one of the caregivers there. 'Cause obviously they have these cages, indoor and outdoor cages, but they have the indoor cages. And I remember working with, I was training a new person. I didn't realize that she had left her keys in the cage with the chimp.
Oh
And
no. Oh.
as I'm walking past, I'm hearing something clank, like clank, 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 clank. And the chimp had its arm underneath through the mesh where the lock was with the key. I was trying to unlock the lock using the key, but couldn't get the angle right because the way the arms bend, couldn't get the angle right on. And I was just like, oh my God. So I had to call the supervisor and we had to like try
Oh.
to bribe it to get the keys back. And I was like, if that chimp just had a little better angle of that, I think it would have been open.
Oh, and that would not be good. Yeah. When
No.
we first put our chimps in the new exhibit that we had so carefully designed and I had helped at, and one of them, they she was a younger one and or like sort of 18 chimp, and she got tired of some of the boy chimps just messing with her. And she just looked at a tree and she went up the tree and out. And we had thought we had measured the distance and that
Whoa.
obviously she could have done this at any time. And she was just like, yeah, I'm sick of this. And that was just,
Oh, wow. I felt that way at work too once in a while. Just climb out again.
you know, yeah, absolutely. I mean, couldn't really fault her for that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I mean, they're people I don't think understand just how smart chimpanzees are. I mean, I've heard that they're about the intelligence of a kindergartner, and they really are that smart. If it wasn't,
Yeah.
sometimes just a little extra ingenuity, then they would have been a lot of trouble in these.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I just it was a learning curve to work with them.
Yes. But that is awesome that you got to do that in LA. What were the orangutans like?
They're funny. They're so smart in a totally different way.
Yeah.
Like, whereas chimps will keep trying things, like you're saying with the keys, like try it, try it, try it. I feel like an orangutan will sit there and stare at it and maybe hide the key in the cheek pouch. And then after everybody's gone for the night, then they'll figure out the exact right way to do it and they'll be outside. Like it's so smart.
Are because I know one thing I learned about chimps, and once again, well, they were a lot of fun. They're also can be extremely aggressive. Uh,
Very.
Now, orangutans, how are they potentially? How aggressive were they, or were they more chill and aggressive?
More chill. I would say a lot more chill. It was a lot more kind of, I don't know, everything moved at a much slower pace. I feel like chimps are cranked up to 10 like
Yeah.
all the time. But the orangutans, like if you wanted to trade something with them, like if they got a hold of something and you had to trade, it was more like, how's this? Instead of, will you have this? Will you take this? Will you take that?
That is awesome.
It's great. It was great to work with both of them because the dichotomy was really interesting.
Yes, yeah, I only ever got to work with chimps. I had two, but my other two jobs I had one with a rhesus monkeys on an
Oh,
island, which was totally different than the chimps because the monkeys are quite different in how they are. Then I worked in the Costa Rican raid farms for a little while with howler monkeys, but I
oh,
always wanted gorillas and I always wanted orangutans. I never could pull that off.
oh. You know, It's never too late. Do you have a primatology degree?
Anthropology,
Okay.
degree in anthropology, but I with a focus in primatology.
Wow. My closest friend actually has that exact same thing. And yeah,
Okay.
her insight to human behavior. She's also a writer. I'm always like, wow, that yeah. But she's like, oh yeah, I got that from monkeys. You know,
Well, that's it's kind of
I
funny.
got that
Like,
from macaques or whatever.
well, now I'm a special ed teacher at a teach English at special ed
Oh,
in school, but so there's the things and from primatology to kind of surprisingly reach over to the world of education.
oh, I bet. Like it's helped me in all sorts of aspects of my life working with apes.
That is awesome. And once again, Doom have done Planet of the Apes. It's one of my favorite franchises.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh, I bet. Yeah, no wonder.
Especially the redo the reboot franchise was amazing.
Yeah, they are actually my partner and I just rewatched that and um he was like, "Oh, you haven't seen this for quite a while." And I was like, "No." And then we watched and I was like, "Oh yeah, I love these movies." Like that whole the original franchise too, but
Yeah.
the this one is so just spot on and I feel like they really looked at ape behavior and movement and it's such a joy
Yes.
to see that.
Well, I know they're coming out with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes this year, and I don't know. I'm very excited for it, and I can't imagine you're not going to be writing a spin-off for that. You probably totally could.
Oh, I would love to. I hope somebody asks me to because I would love to go back to that whole world. Like
Hmm.
actually writing those Planet of the Apes books was I can't believe they let me do that in a way because as a novice writer, I know that's don't have a huge following exactly, but people that love that franchise, they love it. And most of them really know their stuff. And it was so much fun to work in.
Hmm. So when you're writing the space between, what in the science fiction genre are you getting motivated by or inspired by?
Oh, gosh, I read a lot of science. My background is in science. Well, it's in zoology. In that book, there's a ton of stuff with animals, and mostly I felt like a lot of stuff set on generation ships.
Hmm.
It's about going from the one place, oh, the loss of the place they left, or oh, the place they're going. But a generation ship would be about a lot about the people who are in between that
Hmm.
they didn't choose to go on this journey yet they have to sort of work to fulfill this thing that if they don't do it correctly, their original, like their ancestors' work is for naught because
Yep.
they can really mess up. Like if you mess up bad. Yet you also have to live your entire life. And I thought that was a really interesting in terms of the politics. How would science progress? Like we have this idea of this kind of linear progression of science. It doesn't always work that way. And sometimes choices have to be made. The resources, like just the microcosm of that, I felt like was so interesting. And I just really wanted to tell a story like that. So, and I love a lot of science fiction. I really like writing science
Hmm.
fiction, and that and horror are my favorite things to write. So I just thought, I want to read a story like that. So guess I'll write one.
Well, for as someone who loves Star Trek,
Oh, me too.
Trek
Yeah.
yeah, Star Trek has this idea that at the speed of technology, our morality will improve at the speed of our technology.
Mhm.
And that doesn't seem to be necessarily how things are going to work.
Right.
So in your world of space between, it doesn't quite seem like morality is moving at the speed of our technology. So how did you kind of just figure out how that world was going to work and how morality was going to work in your world? And because also I noticed I don't think you gave an exact year this is supposed to take place in our future. It's kind of like it's like some nebulous future. Some point in our
Yeah.
future, this is going to happen. So how did you determine where we were going to be from a societal standpoint at that moment in time?
I thought about that a lot, and I do often like stories that are sort of 5 minutes in the future, as it were. But it's I feel like people are people,
Hmm.
and that often when you read stuff about ancient Rome, you can understand how people like a lot of the culture is opaque, but you can still understand the motivations. And I feel like that would probably be true here too. Like even if it's just whether it's 20 years in the future, 200 years in the future. So I thought a lot about how we can have the best intentions And even if everybody has the same good intention, like we all want what's best for the kids to become adults and have a better world. People can have such disparate ideas of how to get there that often you throw into the mix one person who has nefarious ideas and everything goes and gets blown up. So I really wanted to play with that. And I think you've read the first issue, but like in other issues coming up, we'll see like just tiny little things that somebody, like in the first issue, there's a day gecko. It's like one person wanted day geckos in there. Like, oh, all of a sudden there's an infestation of day geckos. And actually that happened. I put that in there directly because earlier in the year, we went to Hawaii for my birthday and I wanted to see the volcano, but there are day geckos on the big island. They're not supposed to be there. Somebody brought one there and now they're all over the place. And what does that mean for the way, in the future, the ecosystem, everything else? And I feel like there's such fertile ground there for science fiction. Like it's, even if society and technology progresses, people are still going to be people. And people are just going to act in certain ways that aren't always in everybody's best interest. Even if it's a little thing like, oh, I want day geckos. Like, obviously, I want day geckos. I think they're great, but I don't know that they belong in Hawaii.
Well, I know that in your issue you have a cat, but I don't see dogs. Are there dogs in this on the Dodona?
Oh, next issue, you will see so many dogs, you'll probably be sorry.
I do have a cat question in there because the suggestion of this cat and how it gets to a certain area of the ship. Is there a bigger story around that, or is that just so your character Rebel has someone to talk to without having it be all thought bubbles?
Yeah, there will be a little bit more about this in a future issue. A lot of it's kind of that. I mean, I love cats. I have a cat, and she does seem to teleport sometimes. She's an indoor cat, but I'll be sure that she's in the closet, and all of a sudden she's on the bed, and I'm like, I did not see you cross the room. So I wanted to play with that a little bit too, that even, and I feel like a lot of science fiction is so human-centered, and of course we're people. And knowing that you worked with chimps is very interesting because I feel like often we fail to consider how other animals have motivations and reasons for doing things that have nothing to do with us. And if a cat really wants to go someplace, they're going to go. And what we have to say about it is not maybe as much as we think we do. So I like to play with that idea of humans think they have a lot of control. And even if it's a completely human built environment, maybe we don't have as much control as we think we do.
Now, another issue with sci-fi that's difficult from a writer perspective is that, and I'm having the same difficulty when I write mine, which is sci-fi based, is world building and explaining the world in a way that's natural. Now, a little bit of in the story feels like that's sort of Les's job, is try to give you an understanding of how the below decks of the donut works, and Revla kind of gives you exposition to Les about how the above the star line part of the ship is. So was that kind of the purpose? How difficult was it to make the dialogue natural when it's basically exposition to try to explain how things function?
That is such a hard thing, and that's part of why I wanted to do a sort of a love story about people from two different worlds, because I mean that's a old trick, right? You have a reason to have people talk about what they want to talk about, and so often in things you bring everything to a screeching halt when you're watching something that's showing, oh, now we need the exposition dump, and somebody will come in and they're basically the exposition character. And that's a hard thing because if you're building an entire world, and especially in comics, you have visuals, which on one hand makes it easier. On the other hand, something like sci-fi is, well, you're writing sci-fi too. It can be really hard because you can show something amazing, but if you don't explain how it works, you've lost a lot of space there, because then how do you go back later and explain it? Yeah. So I really wanted to try to have a way for them to be able to talk to each other, and in some cases even talk past each other. And that can give a lot of information too, just in showing what they each don't understand about the other one's world, I feel like that's often fertile ground for being able to explain things about the society.
Well, another part that you discuss is Revla discusses is the idea of, I'm gonna say to pronounce it wrong, purposeful breeding. I know it's a different word that's kind of used, but
Yeah.
I can't without stuttering. But how is the individuals up top are bred for their job. So how much control in her life did Revla over her life did Revla have growing up?
I think not as much as in some ways as the people who are the workers, because yeah, I wanted to kind of actually in my first drafts of this, there was a lot more about like how the arranged marriages would work. And a lot of that I totally pared down. It was almost like backstory that I had to understand. But when I got it up on its feet, I was like, this isn't important for this story about these people. And they wouldn't be telling each other things that both of them knew. So I feel like there is a huge amount of control exerted by the people who originally set up this generation ship, that they wanted things to work in this exact way. But I actually did a lot of research reading people, philosophers who work in, there's apparently a whole branch of philosophy called interplanetary liberty, or it goes by different names, but it's basically about how to have a free society in space. And there are actual philosophers who their entire career is thinking about this, because it's so easy to have fascism in space because one person can control the air. And if they don't like what their workers are doing, they can just say, okay, no more oxygen for you. And on Earth, maybe they can say, no more water, but you could get up and leave. You can't leave a
Right.
spaceship. So there's been a lot of people who've done some really deep thinking about this. And before I wrote this series, I was like, okay, I should understand this. It's not in the book exactly, but I hope that it's grinding away in the background and that some of it's coming out. I just kind of trusted that, well, I hope some of these ideas, because I was like, well, I'm not writing philosophy. I'm writing hopefully a fairly exciting science fiction tale.
Right.
So, but yeah, I feel that probably she had less control over her life than like she was a pilot. I think she really likes being a pilot, but I don't know that she had a lot of other choices.
Was she bred to want to be a pilot? I mean, how much control is there over the genetics of who's being born in that world?
I think that she was absolutely bred to be the stature to be a pilot, because in this world, smaller people would do a better job of being pilots just because resources aren't infinite here and the ships are small, and folks that are as big as less, it might be hard. They'd have to retrofit the ships, and you'll see some stuff about that in later issues where people say, no, I don't want to be working in the algae vats. I wanted the chance to fly. And then they're going to have to respect some things about that, because not everybody that is bred to be something or their parents expect them to be something, they're not going to always go that route, because that's another people are people. And I feel like that is not going to change.
So speaking of the title, the space between, or is that referred to the space between Les and Revla? Is that the space between the ones above the star line, the ones below? Is that referring to where humanity is now to the destination? Which is the one that you're primarily referencing by through the title?
All of the above. I really wanted a title that said this is science fiction, and that it primarily, I think it's the space between, it's about the journey. So it's the space between the jumping off point of Earth and where they're going. So this is the what happens along the way story. So I guess that would be the primary reason for the title. But yeah, all of the above, the space between the classes, the space between how far it is to get from one to the other, and just the space between people that's always as close as you can get. There's still going to be that distance that you don't maybe understand each other perfectly.
Well, there's also a reference in the story because there's for the most part, most of the first issue is within a certain time frame. Then it jumps towards the end. I think it's 6 years at the most, 6 years in the future. And Nev states that there's about to be a backlash to the changes Les and Reveler has started. So what does this mean for the future of the Dodona?
Well, it's there's going to be between each issue a big time jump.
Okay.
So the jump in time at the end of this one, I was kind of hoping people would get ready for the fact that, oh, we're going to not tell a perfectly, well, it's a linear story in that it moves from the past to the future, but there are major time jumps because we're going to see uh, the major revolutions that have happened along the way in this journey. So as we go forward, it just has to happen that a society can't stay stagnant. And if it does, that's probably bad for the society.
Are,
So
are you staying with Les and Revela throughout, or is time jump
no,
different?
we'll have new as I've been saying in the marketing, new romance and a new revolution every time. So
That's cool. Now, in one of towards the end of the issue, you have the councils talking about who should be elected and who should be allowed to be electable.
Mhm.
So, how much power do they still have by the end of this issue over control over things? How, let's say, visible is their control over things, or are they more in the shadows?
I think that they were kind of something that ran along in the background. And up to this point, people were still, it was still early enough in the journey that people were kind of like, well, the original people that set this society up, they knew best. We'll follow their plan. And now we're getting to a generation that's far enough removed with these young folks that they're like, wait, why? I mean, as anybody will think of their parents, wait, why do we do it that way? I can have my own traditions, I can have my own way of living. And maybe the way that they thought is not the best. So I think by the end of this issue, the council has realized I didn't want to make there's been so many things where the ruling government is just nefarious and trying to get its own end. And I don't feel like that's the truth here. I feel like they're doing their job to the best of their ability and not thinking about the fact that maybe what they're doing isn't working for the people that they're governing anymore. And that's can be a painful thing because there's always going to be people that go, wait, this is how it's always worked. If we change, things might go badly. So I think that they're not trying to be evil. They're just don't realize that this is not the way that will benefit the most people as the society changes.
Hmm. So, is this an ongoing or a miniseries?
This is a mini. I would not be at all opposed if it sells enough copies that people want a second round of this. I do have many stories in mind that could happen after Planetfall. Will Planetfall happen? Read the last issue and see. But yeah, I would love for it to go on.
So, what can our listeners look forward to in upcoming issues of The Space Between?
Definitely dogs.
Cool.
Many more animals. My zoology degree will definitely make an appearance, but also bigger, more impactful revolutions. This first one was rather gentle because everyone involved had good intentions. That won't always be the case. And some major crises for the people involved.
That sounds awesome. Thank you, Ms. Bechko, so much for talking with me. And so, when is the second issue is coming out?
First week in December, first Wednesday in December, I think is the 6th. I should know this. I should have been prepared. But
Well, very cool. Thank you so much for talking with me.
oh, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, I felt the same way here. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic night.
You too.